Find me a boyfriend by tomorrow. She never expected the Vampire King to step forward. The crystal chandeliers of the Ardinia royal palace cast dancing shadows across the marble ballroom floor as Isabel Montgomery pressed herself against a marble column, her emerald gown rustling with each anxious breath. The annual solstice ball was in full swing, and somewhere in this glittering crowd Duke Raphael Thornwick was hunting for her with a signed marriage contract and her father's blessing. She had 3 days. 3 days until her father would formally announce her engagement to a man whose cruelty was whispered about in every corner of the kingdom. A man twice her age who had buried 2 wives already under mysterious circumstances. "There you are, Lady Isabel," came a sickeningly sweet voice. Isabel's stomach dropped. The Duke's eldest son, Marcus, appeared from behind a group of dancing nobles, his smile not reaching his cold eyes. Where the son prowled, the father was never far behind. Panic seized her chest. She couldn't do this, she wouldn't. Without thinking, Isabel grabbed a champagne flute from a passing server and stepped onto the musician's platform. Her heart hammered as she clinked a fork against the glass, the sharp sound cutting through the music. The orchestra stumbled to a halt, hundreds of faces turned toward her. "Forgive the interruption," Isabel called out, her voice shakier than she intended. She spotted her father's horrified expression across the room and Duke Thornwick's calculating gaze. "But I have an important announcement to make." "Isabel, what are you doing?" her younger brother Thomas hissed from the crowd. She ignored him. This was insane. This was social suicide, but it was her only chance. "I am formally declaring that I am currently involved with someone," the lie tumbled from her lips. "Yes, I have a boyfriend and therefore cannot possibly consider any marriage proposals at this time." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Her father had gone pale. Duke Thornwick's face darkened with rage. "Furthermore," Isabel continued, her desperation mounting, "he will be revealed tomorrow. Yes, I'll bring him to the palace tomorrow to meet my family properly. So, you see, I'm terribly sorry, but I'm quite unavailable for any arrangements." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from the darkest corner of the ballroom, where even the candlelight seemed reluctant to reach, a voice spoke, smooth as silk and cold as winter frost. "Is that so?" Every head turned. The crowd parted like water as a figure stepped forward from the shadows. Isabel's breath caught in her throat. He was tall, impossibly so, with a presence that seemed to draw all the light in the room toward him. His hair was a striking shade of gold, almost luminescent in the candlelight, falling to his shoulders in a way that should have looked soft but instead seemed predatory. His features were carved with an otherworldly perfection, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes that glowed with an unnatural amber light. Those eyes were fixed directly on her. "King Lucian," someone whispered, and the name spread through the crowd like wildfire. Isabel's knees nearly buckled. The Vampire King, the immortal ruler of the Northern Territories who hadn't attended a human court function in over 50 years, the being that mothers used to frighten children into obedience, the monster from 1,000 nightmares. And he was walking straight toward her. "You were saying something about a boyfriend, Lady Isabel." Lucian's voice carried effortlessly across the silent ballroom. He moved with fluid grace, each step deliberate and unhurried. "How curious. I don't recall being informed that our relationship was to be made public quite so dramatically." The world tilted. What?" Isabel stammered. Lucian reached the platform and extended his hand to her, his expression unreadable. Up close he was even more devastating and terrifying. His skin was pale as moonlight, perfect and unmarred. When he smiled, she caught the briefest glimpse of elongated canines. "Come down from there, darling," he said, and though his tone was gentle, it carried the weight of a command. "You're making a spectacle of yourself." Isabel's mind raced. This had to be some kind of mistake, or a nightmare. The Vampire King was claiming to be her boyfriend. But as she looked past him to where Duke Thornwick stood, his face now carefully blank, she realized something. He was afraid. For the first time since she'd met the odious man, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. And suddenly, Lucian's hand in front of her looked less like a threat and more like a lifeline. She placed her trembling fingers in his. His hand was cool but not cold, his grip firm as he helped her down from the platform. The moment her feet touched the ground, Lucian tucked her hand into the crook of his arm as if they'd done this 1,000 times before. "Your Majesty," her father rushed forward, bowing so low his forehead nearly touched his knees. "I had no idea that my daughter had, that you and she were involved," Lucian finished smoothly. His amber eyes never left Isabel's face. "Yes, I prefer to keep my private affairs private, Lord Montgomery, but it seems my dear Isabel has forced my hand. No matter, I was growing tired of secrecy anyway." "This is highly irregular," Duke Thornwick spoke up, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "The lady's father and I had an understanding." "Had," Lucian interrupted, finally turning his gaze to the Duke. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Past tense, I'm sure you understand, Thornwick, I don't share." The threat in those 3 words was unmistakable. Duke Thornwick's throat bobbed as he swallowed, and he took an unconscious step backward. "Of course, Your Majesty, my apologies for the presumption." Isabel felt like she was watching a play in which she'd somehow become the lead actress without learning any of her lines. Lucian's arm beneath her fingers was solid, real, and the only thing keeping her grounded as the entire ballroom began whispering. "I trust this settles the matter," Lucian addressed the crowd at large, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Lady Isabel Montgomery is under my protection. I expect everyone here to treat her accordingly." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled nobles. "I also expect absolute discretion regarding our private affairs. I would be disappointed if rumors were to spread." The threat was subtle but effective. Heads nodded frantically throughout the crowd. "Wonderful," Lucian's expression softened marginally as he looked down at Isabel. "Shall we dance, my love? I believe we've given them enough entertainment for one evening." Before she could respond, he was guiding her onto the dance floor. The orchestra, seeming to understand the assignment, immediately began playing a waltz. Lucian's hand settled on her waist, and he pulled her into the proper position with the confidence of someone who had been dancing since before her grandparents were born. Which, Isabel realized with a jolt, he probably had been. "You're shaking," he observed as they began to move. He was an excellent dancer, his movements precise and elegant, making it easy for her to follow despite her trembling legs. "You're a vampire," she whispered back, acutely aware of every eye in the room watching them. Observant, a hint of amusement colored his tone. Most would have fainted by now. "I'm considering it," Isabel admitted. "Why are you doing this?" Lucian spun her gracefully, bringing her back into his arms with practiced ease. "You declared you needed a boyfriend by tomorrow. I'm simply offering my services." "You're the Vampire King, you don't just offer services." "Don't I?" He tilted his head, studying her with those unsettling amber eyes. "Perhaps I was bored. Perhaps I found your little performance entertaining. Or perhaps," his voice dropped lower, meant only for her ears, "I have my own reasons for wanting Duke Thornwick to keep his distance from what I've claimed as mine." "I'm not yours," Isabel said, though the words came out weaker than intended. "Aren't you?" Lucian's smile was sharp. "You just told 300 witnesses that you have a boyfriend, and I just confirmed it. As far as this kingdom is concerned, you're mine now, Lady Isabel. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" The music swelled around them. Isabel's mind whirled with possibilities, consequences, and the growing realization that she had just jumped from the frying pan directly into an inferno. But when she caught sight of Duke Thornwick over Lucian's shoulder, the man looking furious and impotent in equal measure, she felt a spark of something unexpected. Hope. "I suppose," she said slowly, meeting Lucian's gaze, "I should thank you for the rescue." "Rescue?" Lucian laughed, the sound like dark velvet. "Oh, my dear foolish girl, who said anything about a rescue?" He leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear as he whispered, "I don't save people, I collect them." A shiver ran down Isabel's spine, though whether from fear or something else entirely, she couldn't say. "The ball will end soon," Lucian continued, pulling back to look at her. "You'll go home with your family tonight, but tomorrow, as you so boldly declared, you'll introduce your boyfriend to your father. I'll arrive at noon, don't be late. And then what? Then, his smile widened, showing just a hint of fang. Then you'll come stay at my castle for a time, a week, perhaps 2, long enough to make this charade convincing, long enough for Duke Thornwick to find another victim to torment, and long enough, his hand tightened on her waist, for both of us to figure out what we've truly gotten ourselves into. The song ended. Lucian stepped back, bowing formally as if she were royalty herself. The entire ballroom watched as he lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that burned like ice and fire combined. Until tomorrow, Lady Isabel, he said, then louder for the benefit of their audience. Sleep well, my darling, dream of me. And with that he turned and strode from the ballroom, the crowd parting before him like he was Moses and they were the Red Sea. The shadows seemed to welcome him back, and in a blink he was gone. Isabel stood frozen on the dance floor, her hand still tingling where his lips had touched, her mind reeling with what had just happened. Belle, her brother Thomas, rushed to her side, gripping her shoulders. Have you lost your mind, the Vampire King? What were you thinking? I was thinking, Isabel said faintly, that I needed a boyfriend by tomorrow. You've made a deal with a monster. Isabel watched the doorway where Lucian had disappeared, her heart still racing, her skin still buzzing with the memory of his touch. I know, she whispered, but maybe that's exactly what I need. Isabel didn't sleep that night. She sat by her bedroom window, watching the moon trace its arc across the sky, replaying every moment of the ball. Every word Lucian had spoken, every glance, every subtle threat wrapped in velvet promises. I don't share. I collect them. What had she done? When dawn finally broke, painting her room in shades of gold and rose, Isabel felt no relief. Only the mounting dread of knowing that in 6 hours the Vampire King would arrive at her family's estate, and whatever game had begun last night would continue. You can't possibly be serious about this, her mother said for the 15th time as servants helped Isabel into a deep burgundy dress. Lady Montgomery's hands fluttered nervously over her daughter's hair, her face pale with worry. A vampire, Isabel, the Vampire King of all creatures. Your father is beside himself. Better a vampire than Duke Thornwick, Isabel replied, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Her mother's expression softened with pain. Is that what this is about? Darling, the Duke's reputation is just rumors. 3 dead wives aren't rumors, Mother, they're facts. Isabel met her mother's eyes in the mirror. Whatever King Lucian wants from me, at least he was honest about being a monster. Thornwick pretends to be human while being so much worse. A knock on the door interrupted them. Thomas stuck his head in, his face grim. He's here, early. Isabel's stomach clenched. It was only 11 o'clock. Of course he is, she muttered, smoothing down her dress with trembling hands. Let him wait in the drawing room. Tell him I'll be down shortly. Belle, you don't have to do this, Thomas said quietly. We can run, I have money saved. We could go to the eastern provinces, disappear. And live as fugitives, have father stripped of his title for breaking a contract with the Duke. Isabel shook her head. No, this is my mess, I'll handle it. She descended the main staircase 10 minutes later, each step feeling like a walk to the gallows. The drawing room doors were closed, but she could hear her father's nervous voice inside, speaking too quickly, too loudly. The butler opened the doors, announcing her. The conversation stopped. Lucian stood by the window, backlit by noon sun that should have been painful for a vampire, but seemed to merely make his golden hair glow like a halo. He dressed impeccably in black and silver, every inch the royal monarch. When he turned to face her, his amber eyes tracked her movement with predatory focus. Lady Isabel, he said warmly as if they truly were lovers reunited, you look lovely. Your Majesty, she replied, managing a curtsy despite her shaking knees. Please, we're past such formalities. He crossed to her in 3 long strides and took her hand, kissing it just as he had the night before. Lucian, remember. Her father cleared his throat awkwardly. Your Majesty, Lucian, we're honoured by your presence, though I must admit we're all quite surprised by this development. Isabel never mentioned. That's my fault entirely, Lucian said smoothly, keeping Isabel's hand tucked in his. His thumb traced small circles on her palm, a gesture that appeared affectionate but felt like a brand. I insisted on discretion. My position makes relationships complicated, as I'm sure you understand. Of course, Lord Montgomery blustered. Though the circumstances are unusual, we're naturally delighted that our daughter has caught the eye of such a distinguished individual. Distinguished, Isabel almost laughed. Her father couldn't even say the word vampire. I hope you'll forgive me for being direct, Lucian continued, but I didn't come here merely for pleasantries. Last night's public declaration has accelerated certain plans. For Isabel's safety, and to properly establish our relationship in the eyes of the court, I'd like her to stay at Ravenhill Castle for a fortnight. A fortnight, her mother gasped, unchaperoned. I assure you, Lady Montgomery, your daughter's virtue is safe with me. Lucian's smile was pure innocence, which somehow made it more dangerous. I have an entire staff of female servants who will attend to her every need. She'll have her own wing of the castle, complete privacy, and freedom to leave at any time. I simply want to ensure that Duke Thornwick understands the seriousness of my claim. The unspoken threat hung in the air. Refuse and I'll withdraw my protection. Her father understood. When would you want her to leave? Today, Lucian said. Now, preferably, I have carriages waiting. That's impossible, her mother protested. She needs time to pack to prepare. Mother, Isabel surprised herself by speaking up. She looked at Lucian, reading the calculation in his eyes. He wanted her off balance, wanted her in his territory before she could think too hard about what she was agreeing to. It's fine. I don't need much. An hour to pack some essentials. Something flickered in Lucian's expression. Approval maybe, or respect. 1 hour, he agreed. I'll wait. The carriage that bore the royal crest was like nothing Isabel had ever seen. Black lacquered wood inlaid with silver, pulled by 4 massive horses that looked like they'd been bred in nightmares. Inside, the seats were plush velvet, and small enchanted lanterns provided soft light. Lucian sat across from her as they rolled away from her family estate, his long legs taking up most of the space. They'd been travelling in silence for 20 minutes when he finally spoke. You handled that well. Isabel looked up from her clenched hands. Did I have a choice? There's always a choice. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You could have refused, told your father the truth, that last night was a desperate lie and I'm a stranger taking advantage. Would you have let me? No, he admitted with a slight smile, but you could have tried. Why are you doing this? The question burst out of her. And don't say you were bored or found me entertaining. The Vampire King doesn't just show up at a human ball and claim a random noblewoman on a whim. Lucian studied her for a long moment. You're right, he said finally. I don't. Then why? He leaned back, his gaze drifting to the window where forests rushed past. Duke Thornwick has become a problem, not just for you, for my kingdom. He's been trafficking in illegal blood magic, using human sacrifices to attempt dark rituals. His previous wives weren't victims of unfortunate accidents, they were murdered for power. Horror washed over Isabel, and my father was going to give me to him. Your father is desperate. Thornwick holds his gambling debts, quite substantial ones. The marriage would have cleared them. Lucian's eyes returned to her, sharp with intensity. I've been investigating the Duke for months, but he's careful. Protected by human laws I can't break without causing a political incident. However, if his intended bride is suddenly under my protection. He can't touch me without declaring war on you, Isabel finished. Exactly, and more than that, you become leverage, bait if you will. You want to use me to draw him out. I want to save you while also destroying a man who's been murdering innocent women for power, Lucian corrected. Call it killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Isabel should have felt angry, used, but instead she felt something unexpected, relief. This wasn't about her at all, it was politics, strategy. There was no dark obsession, no vampiric claim on her soul. So this is just an arrangement, she said, a business transaction. Something unreadable crossed Lucian's face. Is that disappointment I hear, Lady Isabel? No, she said quickly. I'm relieved, this makes sense. We're using each other, you get your bait, I escape a murderer. In 2 weeks you'll have what you need and I can. What? Return home. The Duke's debts will be cleared, Lucian said. Anonymously, of course. Your father will have no reason to force you into any marriage. You'll be free to choose your own path. That's generous. I'm not doing it for generosity. His voice hardened. I'm doing it because Thornwick's crimes offend me, and I take care of problems that threaten my territory. I'm in your territory now. The moment you took my hand last night, you entered my world. He held her gaze. Welcome to the shadows, Isabel. The carriage hit a bump, jostling her forward. Lucian's hand shot out, steadying her with reflexes too fast to be human. For a moment they were frozen, his hand on her arm, their faces inches apart. She could see the ring of gold around his pupils, the impossible perfection of his skin. Could smell something like winter frost and old books, and something darkly sweet she couldn't identify. Thank you, she whispered. He released her slowly. We'll arrive within the hour. Ravenhill can be overwhelming for first-time visitors. Don't be afraid. I'm not afraid of you, Isabel said. Lucian's laugh was soft and dangerous. Then you're either very brave or very foolish. I haven't decided which yet. Ravenhill Castle rose from the mountainside like a crown of black stone and silver spires. It was massive, ancient, and beautiful in a terrible, austere way. As the carriage climbed the winding road, Isabel saw why it had earned its name. Thousands of ravens nested in the surrounding trees, their calls echoing through the valley. Home sweet home, Lucian said dryly as they passed through gates that opened by themselves. The courtyard was bustling with activity, servants in elegant livery, guards in ceremonial armor, and others whose too pale skin and amber eyes marked them as vampires. They all stopped and bowed as Lucian emerged from the carriage. He helped Isabel down, his hand firm and cool around hers. This is Lady Isabel Montgomery, he announced to the assembled staff. She's my honored guest and is to be treated with the same respect you'd show me. Her word is law in this castle. Anyone who fails to meet this expectation will answer to me personally. Understood? A chorus of "Yes, Your Majesty" echoed through the courtyard. A woman who appeared to be in her 40s, but carried herself with the timeless grace of a vampire, stepped forward. Your Majesty, my lady, I'm Vera, the head of household. Your rooms are prepared. Thank you, Vera, Lucian gestured for Isabel to follow. I'll show her personally. They entered the castle through doors that were 3 times Isabel's height. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior, vaulted ceilings, tapestries that looked centuries old, and more candles than Isabel could count filling the space with flickering light. The castle has 3 main wings, Lucian explained as they walked. East wing is administrative, council rooms, libraries, archives. West wing is residential, guest quarters, servant housing, kitchens. North wing is my private quarters. And where will I be staying? Lucian stopped in front of a grand staircase that split in 2 directions. That's an interesting question. Isabel's heart skipped. What do you mean? Well, if we're to convince everyone that our relationship is genuine, it would make sense for you to stay in the north wing, near my rooms. The staff will talk, word will spread, and Duke Thornwick will hear that you're truly under my intimate protection. Heat crept up Isabel's neck. And if I prefer the west wing? Then that's where you'll stay. He met her eyes. I meant what I said, Isabel. You have freedom here, but freedom comes with choices, and choices have consequences. She understood what he wasn't saying. Staying in the guest wing would be safer, more proper, but would weaken their charade. Staying near his quarters would be scandalous, dangerous, but far more convincing. How close is near? She asked. Adjoining rooms with a locked door between them. He pulled a key from his pocket and held it out. Your lock, your key, I won't enter unless invited. Isabel took the key, its metal warm from being in his pocket. You're asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to be smart. Lucian's expression was serious. Thornwick has spies everywhere. If you're going to be bait, you need to be convincing bait. Half measures will only put you in danger. He was right, she knew he was right. Fine, Isabel decided. North wing, but that door stays locked. As you wish, Lucian's smile returned, pleased. Let me show you to your new home. Her rooms were stunning. A large bedchamber with a 4-poster bed draped in midnight blue silk, a sitting room with a fireplace and walls lined with bookshelves, and a bathing room with a tub large enough to swim in. Windows overlooked the mountains, and a balcony offered a view of the star-filled sky. This is too much, Isabel breathed. This is the minimum of what you deserve. Lucian stood in the doorway between their rooms, his side dark and unexplored, hers warm and inviting. Dinner is at 8, formal dress, unfortunately. I'm hosting a few council members who are curious about my mysterious girlfriend. More acting. More convincing, he corrected. Get some rest, Vera will bring you anything you need. He started to close the door, then paused. Isabel, you said earlier that you're not afraid of me. I'm not. You should be. His amber eyes glowed in the dim light. Because the most dangerous thing about me isn't that I'm a monster, it's that I'm very, very good at making people forget that I am. The door clicked shut. Isabel heard the lock turn from his side, a courtesy giving her control. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she walked to the door and pressed her palm against it, wondering what kind of monster kept his promises, offered protection, and warned his victims about his own danger. The kind, she realized, that was far more threatening than any obvious predator. Because Lucian was right about one thing, she was already starting to forget what he was. And that terrified her more than anything else. Dinner was an elaborate affair. Isabel descended the grand staircase wearing a gown that Vera had somehow procured in her exact size, deep sapphire silk that made her eyes look like storms. Her hair was swept up, exposing her neck in a way that felt both elegant and vulnerable. Lucian waited at the bottom of the stairs, and the look he gave her made her breath catch. He changed into formal attire, black jacket with silver embroidery, his golden hair pulled back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. You're trying to kill me, he said quietly as she reached him. I thought you were already dead. His laugh was genuine. Touché, he offered his arm, ready to play the devoted girlfriend. As ready as I'll ever be. The dining hall held 6 other guests, 4 vampires and 2 humans, all members of Lucian's council. They stood as Isabel entered, and she felt their assessing gazes like physical touches. Everyone, this is Lady Isabel Montgomery, Lucian announced, his hand settling possessively on her lower back. Isabel, my counsel. The introductions blurred together, Lord Cassius, Lady Morgana, Chancellor Dimitri, until one woman caught her attention. She appeared younger than Isabel, with silver hair and knowing eyes. Serafina, the woman introduced herself, not bothering with titles. I'm Lucian's sister. You didn't mention you had a sister, Isabel murmured to Lucian as they took their seats at the head of the table. Half-sister, he corrected, and she's terrifying, be nice to her. Serafina smirked from across the table. I like her already, brother, she's got spine. The meal was surprisingly enjoyable. The vampires ate human food, though Isabel noticed none of them drank the wine. Their goblets held something darker, thicker. She tried not to think about it. So, Lady Isabel, Lord Cassius said, his tone polite but probing, how exactly did you and His Majesty meet? Lucian's been rather secretive about the whole affair. Isabel glanced at Lucian, who looked amused by her predicament. At a library, actually, she improvised. I was researching historical treatises for my father, and Lucian was also researching. How romantic, Morgana drawled, bonding over dusty books. Some of us appreciate intellectual pursuits, Lucian said smoothly, his hand finding Isabel's under the table and squeezing once, approval for her quick thinking. Besides, Isabel quoted an obscure passage from the Treaty of Ashenvale at me. How could I not be intrigued? The Treaty of Ashenvale was negotiated by your great-great-grandfather, Dimitri noted to Isabel, his eyes sharp. Most humans don't even know it exists. I'm not most humans, Isabel replied, lifting her chin, and apparently neither is my taste in companions. That earned her a few chuckles and a brilliant smile from Lucian. "Oh, I definitely like her," Serafina declared. "Tell me, Isabel, are you aware that my brother hasn't so much as looked at a woman in over a century? What makes you so special?" The table went quiet. Lucian's expression didn't change, but Isabel felt him tense beside her. "Maybe I just have excellent timing," Isabel said lightly. "Or maybe your brother simply got tired of waiting for someone worth his time." "Careful," Serafina's eyes glittered with mischief. "Talk like that, and I might actually believe this relationship is real." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Did Serafina know this was a charade? Was she testing them? "Whether you believe it or not doesn't change the truth," Lucian said, his voice carrying an edge of warning. "Isabel is under my protection and she's here as my guest. I expect all of you to make her feel welcome." "Of course, Your Majesty," Cassius said, but his eyes remained suspicious. The rest of the dinner passed with lighter conversation, but Isabel couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just passed some kind of test, though whether she'd succeeded or failed, she couldn't tell. "I'm sorry about Serafina," Lucian said later as he walked Isabel back to her rooms. The castle was quiet now, the council members having departed. "She has a talent for making things awkward." "She knows this isn't real," Isabel said. "She suspects, but Serafina is loyal above all else. She won't undermine me, even if she thinks I'm playing a dangerous game." They reached her door. Isabel paused with her hand on the handle. "Am I," she asked, "playing a dangerous game?" Lucian stepped closer, and suddenly the hallway felt much smaller. "Depends on the stakes. What are you playing for, Isabel?" "Freedom, a life where I'm not someone's pawn." "And what am I playing for?" "Justice, protection of your kingdom." She met his eyes. "Right." "Right," he echoed, but something in his tone felt off. He reached past her to open her door, bringing him even closer. "Sleep well, Isabel. Tomorrow I'll show you the castle grounds, unless you'd prefer to hide in your room." "I don't hide." "No," he agreed, his gaze dropping briefly to her lips before returning to her eyes. "You don't. Good night." He was gone before she could respond, moving with that supernatural speed that left her alone in the hallway, wondering if she'd imagined the heat in his eyes. The next 3 days fell into a strange rhythm. Mornings, Isabel explored the castle, the library with its thousands of ancient books, the gardens where night-blooming flowers filled the air with intoxicating scent, the portrait gallery where Lucian's ancestors stared down with his same amber eyes. Afternoons, Lucian would find her wherever she'd wandered and they'd talk, about everything and nothing. He told her about the history of vampires, the treaties that kept peace between species, the burden of ruling for centuries. She told him about her childhood, her dreams of traveling, her love of philosophy and debate. They were becoming friends, she realized, or something like it. Evenings were for appearances, formal dinners, walks through the gardens where servants could see them, moments of careful choreographed intimacy, a hand on her waist, his jacket around her shoulders, laughter that wasn't entirely faked. The charade was working too well. On the 4th night, Isabel stood on her balcony, unable to sleep. The moon was full, painting the mountains in silver light. Couldn't sleep either. She jumped. Lucian stood on his own balcony just a few feet away, close enough to see the tired lines around his eyes. "Too much on my mind," she admitted. "Want to talk about it?" "Not particularly, you." "Same," he paused. "Would you like some company anyway?" Before she could answer, he'd vaulted over his railing and landed on hers with impossible grace, perching on the stone balustrade like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Show off," she muttered. "One of the few perks of immortality." He gestured to the space beside him. "Join me." "I'm not sitting on the railing 4 stories up." "I won't let you fall." There was something in his voice, a promise, a challenge. Isabel found herself moving forward, letting him help her up. She settled beside him, his arm steady around her waist, and tried not to think about the drop below. "See, not so bad." "You have a strange definition of not so bad." They sat in comfortable silence watching the stars. Isabel was acutely aware of everywhere their bodies touched, his arm around her, his thigh against hers, the cool solidity of him. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Always. What Serafina said about you not looking at anyone in over a century, was that true?" Lucian was quiet for a moment. "Yes." "Why?" "Because immortality is lonely, and attachment is painful. Everyone I've ever cared about either dies or leaves eventually. It's easier to keep distance." "That sounds like a terrible way to live." "It's a practical way to survive." He looked at her, his face shadows and moonlight. "But then you stood up at that ball, desperate and brave and foolish, and demanded a boyfriend by tomorrow. And I thought," he trailed off. "What did you think?" "That maybe some things are worth the risk of pain." Isabel's heart hammered. "Lucian." "I know," he interrupted. "This is supposed to be an arrangement, a business transaction. You're bait, I'm protection, and in a week we go our separate ways. I haven't forgotten." "Then why do I feel like everything's changing?" His hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that belied his strength. "Because it is changing. Because I can't stop thinking about you. Because every smile you give me feels like sunlight, and I haven't seen the sun properly in 300 years. You said I should be afraid of you." "You should be." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I'm falling for you, Isabel. That makes me more dangerous than any monster." She should pull away. This was madness. He was a vampire, an immortal king, a creature from nightmares. But when he looked at her like that, like she was precious, like she was everything, she couldn't remember why any of that mattered. "I'm falling too," she whispered. Lucian's eyes blazed golden. "That's the worst news you could give me." "Why?" "Because now I can't let you go." He kissed her then, and it was nothing like she'd imagined. His lips were cool but soft, the kiss careful and questioning, like he was afraid she might break. She responded without thinking, her hands sliding into his golden hair, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened. Lucian made a sound low in his throat and pulled her fully into his arms, his control visibly fraying. She could feel the tension in his body, the barely restrained power, the way he held back even as he claimed her mouth. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isabel's world had tilted on its axis. "This complicates things," she managed. Understatement of the century. Lucian rested his forehead against hers. "We should talk about this, set boundaries, figure out what this means." "Tomorrow," Isabel decided. "Tonight, just hold me." He did, wrapping her in his arms as they sat on the balcony railing under the stars. And for the first time since this mad adventure began, Isabel felt truly safe. She woke to shouting. Isabel jolted upright in bed. When had she gotten to bed? And heard Vera's panicked voice outside her door. "My lady, please wake up. We need to get you to safety." Isabel threw open the door. Vera stood there with 3 guards, all armed. "What's happening?" "Duke Thornwick," Vera said grimly. "He's here with soldiers. He's demanding an audience with His Majesty and claiming you've been kidnapped against your will." Ice flooded Isabel's veins. "Where's Lucian?" "Dealing with the Duke in the main hall. He sent us to protect you." Like hell, Isabel pushed past them. "I'm not hiding while Lucian faces him alone." "My lady, His Majesty was very clear." "And I'm very clear that I make my own choices." She ran through the castle in her nightgown and robe, following the sounds of angry voices. The main hall was in chaos. Thornwick's soldiers lined one side, Lucian's guards the other, and in the center stood Lucian and the Duke, facing off like predators. "No right to keep her here," Thornwick was shouting. "She's engaged to me by legal contract." "She's under my protection by her own choice," Lucian replied, his voice deadly calm. "And no contract supersedes her free will." "Free will? You've enchanted her, used vampire magic to cloud her mind." "I've done no such thing." "Then let her speak for herself." "I'm right here," Isabel announced, stepping into the hall. Every eye turned to her. "And nobody's enchanted me, Duke Thornwick. I'm here because I choose to be." Thornwick's face contorted with rage. Your father signed a contract. A contract I never agreed to. Isabel walked to Lucian's side, and his hand immediately found hers, squeezing once. You're a murderer, Duke Thornwick. I know what happened to your previous wives. Did you think I'd just submit to being your next victim? Lies spread by this vampire filth. Careful, Lucian interrupted softly. I've been patient out of respect for human law, but my patience has limits. You can't touch me, I'm under royal protection. Are you? A new voice rang out. Everyone turned to see a figure in royal regalia entering the hall. King Edmund, the human king of Ardinia, flanked by his own guards. Because I received some very interesting reports yesterday, Thornwick. Reports about illegal blood magic, human sacrifices, and 3 mysterious deaths. Thornwick went pale. Your Majesty, I can explain. You'll explain to a magistrate. King Edmund gestured to his guards. Duke Raphael Thornwick, you're under arrest for suspicion of murder and prohibited magical practices. Take him. Chaos erupted. Thornwick's soldiers moved to defend him, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Within minutes, the Duke was in chains, screaming threats and protests as he was dragged away. King Edmund approached Lucian and Isabel, his expression weary. King Lucian, thank you for your information. The evidence you provided was comprehensive. Happy to help maintain justice, Your Majesty. The human king's gaze shifted to Isabel. Lady Montgomery, you're free to return home. Your father's debts have been settled and all contracts with Thornwick are void. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. Freedom, the chance to go home, to return to her normal life. She looked up at Lucian, whose expression was carefully blank, and realized she didn't want normal. Thank you, Your Majesty, she said, but I think I'll stay here a while longer, if King Lucian will have me. Lucian's carefully neutral mask cracked, revealing something raw and hopeful. Are you sure? I'm sure, she squeezed his hand. Someone once told me that some things are worth the risk of pain. I'd like to find out if they were right. King Edmund chuckled. Well then, I suppose this alliance is more than political after all. He bowed slightly to both of them. I'll leave you to your reunion. Lucian will speak soon about the treaty updates. When the hall finally cleared and they were alone, Lucian pulled Isabel into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. You could have left, he said into her hair. You were free. I am free, she corrected. That's why I'm choosing to stay. He pulled back to look at her, his amber eyes bright. I'm still a vampire, still immortal, still dangerous. I know. I'll outlive you by centuries. Loving me means eventual pain. Loving anyone means eventual pain, Isabel countered. At least with you I get centuries together first. You're talking about centuries, forever. Is that an offer, Your Majesty? Lucian laughed, the sound full of joy and disbelief. You're insane, absolutely insane. Says the vampire who claimed a stranger as his girlfriend at a ball. Best decision I ever made. He kissed her then, deep and passionate and full of promise. When they broke apart he was grinning. Fair warning, Serafina is going to be insufferable about this. She'll claim she knew all along. Let her, I like your sister. You're the only one. He sobered slightly. Isabel, are you truly sure this life, it's not easy? There will be challenges, politics, people who object to a human queen. Queen, she raised an eyebrow. Eventually, if you want, no pressure. He looked uncharacteristically flustered. I'm getting ahead of myself. Good, Isabel said, kissing him again. I like you flustered, and yes, I'm sure. I went from needing a boyfriend by tomorrow to falling for a vampire king. I might as well commit to the madness. Tomorrow, Lucian mused. You did find a boyfriend by tomorrow. Technically you found him that same night. I'm very efficient. You're very perfect. As dawn began to break over the mountains, they stood together in the hall where this chapter had begun, holding each other and laughing at the absurdity and beauty of it all. Isabel had declared she needed a boyfriend by tomorrow, never expecting the vampire king to step forward. But he had, and she'd never been more grateful for a desperate, foolish declaration in her entire life. 3 months later. The wedding was the event of the century, a grand affair that united the vampire and human kingdoms in more ways than one. Isabel wore a gown of white and silver, with a crown of starlight in her hair. Lucian stood beside her in ceremonial armor, his golden hair gleaming, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. When the priest asked if she took this vampire, this king, this impossible creature as her husband, Isabel didn't hesitate. "I do." And when Lucian kissed her, sealing their vows, the cheers from both humans and vampires shook the rafters of the cathedral. Still sure about this, he whispered against her lips. "Ask me again in a century," she whispered back. "It's a date." As they walked down the aisle hand in hand, Isabel caught sight of Serafina in the crowd, wiping away tears and trying to pretend she wasn't. "I told you so," the vampire princess mouthed. Isabel laughed, squeezing Lucian's hand tighter, and stepped forward into her new life, a life she'd chosen, a love she'd fought for, and a future that stretched out like starlight, bright and endless and impossibly beautiful. Sometimes the best things in life came from the most desperate moments. And sometimes, when you declared you needed a boyfriend by tomorrow, the universe sent you a vampire king instead. Did Isabel and Lucian's story capture your heart? Drop a comment below telling us your favorite moment.